the month of Ramzan, the holy month when Muslims fast during daylight. When Ramzan began 8 days ago, it brought with it a cruel irony for the people of Gaza, who were staring at starvation after 5 devastating months of the Israel-Hamas war. Now the embattled enclave is faced with a famine. According to the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, or IPC, which is a global hunger monitor, extreme food shortages in parts of the Gaza Strip have already exceeded famine levels, and mass death is now imminent without an immediate ceasefire and surge of food supplies to areas cut off by fighting. This report, which is relied on even by UN agencies, says 70% of people in parts of northern Gaza are suffering the most severe level of food shortage, more than triple the 20% threshold to be considered famine. The IPC says while it does not have enough data on death rates, it is estimated that residents of Gaza would soon be dying on a famine scale, which is defined as 2 people out of every 10,000 dying daily from starvation or malnutrition and disease. Gaza's health ministry has said at least 27 children and 3 adults have died so far from malnutrition. In all, 1.1 million Gazans, that's around half the enclave's population, are experiencing catastrophic shortages of food, with around 300,000 now facing the prospect of famine-scale death rates. The prospect of a man-made famine in Gaza has brought the strongest criticism of Israel from around the globe, including its Western allies, since it launched its war against Hamas following the deadly attack on Israeli territory on the 7th of October. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell recently said, "In Gaza, we are no longer on the brink of famine. We are in a state of famine. Starvation is used as a weapon of war. Israel is provoking famine." UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called the IPC report an appalling indictment and said Israel must allow complete and unfettered access to all parts of Gaza. Britain's Foreign Secretary David Cameron has said it is clear that the status quo is unsustainable. We need urgent action now to avoid a famine. Israel claims it allowed extensive humanitarian aid into Gaza by land, air and sea for anyone willing to help, but the aid was violently disturbed by Hamas. It also claims it is opening more routes by land and also allowing sea shipments and airdrops. However, aid agencies say they still cannot get enough supplies through or distribute them safely, especially in northern Gaza. Israel's bombardment of Gaza has destroyed food infrastructure and farmland across the territory. Aid agencies say enhanced Israeli security checks on delivery trucks have created bottlenecks around aid reaching the population. Nadia Abu Nahel, a 57-year-old mother caring for an extended family of 10 children in Gaza City, has been quoted by news agencies as saying, "I remember the last Ramzan. There was good food, juices, dates, milk, everything you could want. Compared to this year, it is like heaven and hell." She says the children are now craving a loaf of bread. It is a meal they dream of. Their bones are becoming softer. They are dizzy. They struggle to walk. They're becoming very thin. According to the Poverty Charity Care, at least 27 people, 23 of them children, have died from malnutrition or dehydration in northern Gaza in recent weeks. The real number, according to doctors from several hospitals, is likely to be higher. Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, the head of pediatrics at Kamal Adwan Hospital, says, "I feel helpless to save these children, and it's a hard and shameful feeling. I have the same feeling for my staff who cannot find enough food for themselves and some days do not eat at all." Israel is waging a war by starvation, he says, intentionally depriving children of food, killing them with hunger. There is no law in the world that allows occupiers to do this, he added. Israel denies that it's intentionally starving Gazans. It has blamed the United Nations, which it says has created logistical challenges around aid deliveries, as well as Hamas, which Israel says has commandeered aid. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu even denied last week that Gazans were starving. He claimed, "That's not the information we have and we monitor it closely." But Gazans are starving. Abir Etafa, the World Food Programme senior spokesperson, says the facts speak for themselves. 1.1 million people are in IPC phase 5. That's catastrophic hunger. And more than a third of children under the age of 2 are acutely malnourished. That means they are at the risk of death. That is the heart-wrenching reality of war-torn Gaza today.
The latest report on food insecurity in Gaza is an appalling indictment of conditions on the ground for civilians. The world's leading experts on food insecurity clearly document that famine in the northern part of Gaza is imminent. More than half of all Palestinians in Gaza, 1.1 million people, have completely exhausted their food supplies and are facing catastrophic hunger, according to the report. Palestinians in Gaza are enduring horrifying levels of hunger and suffering. This is the highest number of people facing catastrophic hunger ever recorded by the Integrated Food Security Classification System anywhere, anytime. This is an entirely man-made disaster, and the report makes clear that it can be halted. Today's report is Exhibit A for the need for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. I call on the Israeli authorities to ensure complete and unfettered access for humanitarian goods throughout Gaza, and for the international community to fully support our humanitarian efforts. We must act now to prevent the unthinkable, the unacceptable, and the unjustifiable.
Look at some of the assessments that we're seeing now. They only underscore the urgency of making sure that this assistance is a priority and that it's sustained. Again, according to the most respected measure of these things, 100% of the population in Gaza is at severe levels of acute food insecurity. That's the first time an entire population has been so classified. We also see, again, according to, in this case, the United Nations, 100%, the totality of the population, is in need of humanitarian assistance. Compare that to Sudan, about 80% of the population there is in need of humanitarian assistance. Afghanistan, about 70%. So again, this only underscores both the urgency, the imperative of making this the priority. We've seen...
Earlier today, President Biden spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu, as you all have heard. The two leaders discussed the latest developments in Israel and Gaza, and they spoke about the state of Israel's military operations. The president emphasized his bone-deep commitment to ensuring the long-term security of Israel, and he affirmed, as he did in the State of the Union, that Israel has a right to go after Hamas, the perpetrators of the worst massacre of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. More innocent civilians have died in this conflict, in this military operation, than in all of the wars in Gaza combined, including thousands of children. A humanitarian crisis has descended across Gaza, and anarchy reigns in areas that Israel's military has cleared but not stabilized.
All right, the heart-wrenching reality of war-torn Gaza today during the holy month of Ramzan. This is truly a tragic Ramzan for Palestinians this time around. Let's introduce our guest. Joining me on the show tonight is Itay Melchior, researcher and advisor for Middle East Affairs, joining us live from Haifa in Israel. Dr. Ido Zelkovitz, head of the Middle East Studies at YVC, joining us also from Israel. And completing the panel tonight is Lev Aaron, Israeli journalist and columnist. A warm welcome to all of you for joining me on Global Lens. Lev, let me begin with you. You've been a regular on this show. We've, for months now, talked about how the war has progressed, whether Israel has managed to achieve its military objectives, how many people have died. Today, we are focusing on an issue that should not just alarm but frankly shame all of humanity. There is an entire people in the Gaza conclave who are today facing the dreadful prospect of famine. This has been described as a man-made famine. Everyone from the UN chief to multiple other aid agencies and countries around the world, including Israel's Western allies, today are saying that these are catastrophic food shortages and Israel cannot continue to look the other way. And then there are those who say that Israel is provoking famine. It is using hunger to kill the people of Gaza. Whichever way you look at it, Lev, whichever side of the divide you may be on in this war, I think one thing we can all agree on is millions of people staring at starvation, dying from hunger and malnutrition while the world looks on, should be absolutely unacceptable. It should be a burden on the conscience of each one of us.
I don't think that anybody plays down the tragedy in Gaza, at least not in Israel. I think that we all know that many Gazans who have no connection to the war, they are suffering. But when we see that, for instance, the UN chief says that it is a man-made tragedy, and he doesn't speak at all about the hostages, about the need of Hamas to free the hostages, about the need of Hamas to give up the way it was ruling Gaza for many years. This kind of criticism does not delve into the Israeli public, because I feel that as far as most Israelis are concerned, I'm not speaking only about the right-wing top government, for instance, Netanyahu. I am also speaking about quite a lot of center-left voices in Israel. It is a complex issue, and it is a fact that the war was not started by Israel and that Israel has no will to starve Gaza. So if we say that it is a tragedy, we have Israelis that we can talk with. Once we say it is a man-made tragedy, that Israel wants Gaza to starve to death, I feel that Israel will use death diplomacy and will not listen to these accusations, because the feeling will be that it is a biased accusation that does not want to solve the problem, but wants to blame Israel as part of the blame game in Gaza. And I also want to apologize that I cannot be here later in the show, so please forgive me for this.
Okay, sure. Itai Melchior, let me come to you. You know, for over 5 months now, we've heard our Israeli friends go on and on about how Israel is exercising the right to self-defense, how it is fighting Hamas terrorists and not Palestinian civilians. Lev just said, oh, but then the UN chief does not condemn Hamas. Oh, but then he does not talk about the release of hostages. My question is simply this. How does that take away from the fact that today 2.3 million people in Gaza are starving, that thousands and thousands and thousands of these people could die of hunger or malnutrition and disease in the days and weeks ahead? Everyone now acknowledges this tragic reality. My question simply is, how can Israel go on justifying its present war strategy by using the same arguments that it's been repeating over and over again like a broken record for the last 5 months, despite witnessing what is happening there? People are dying from hunger.
Yeah, I'll be more blunt than my colleague. I'm a former diplomat and he's a journalist, but let me go off diplomacy and be very blunt. okay? We cannot downplay the issue of hostages. That is humanitarian. There are 100 and something people being
But
held in
nobody is
tunnels.
downplaying
Wait,
it.
no, but this whole thing can finish by the end of the show. Hamas is the one that has the keys to resolve this, not Israel. Now, you're talking about 2 million. I'm watching your show, not every day, and I've been watching Borrell speak about catastrophe. But if you listened well to what Blinken said, he said in Sudan, only 80% of people are in this situation. But 80% of people, and I've been to Sudan, 80% of people in Sudan is more than 30 million people who are in the same situation as the people in Gaza. And I have not seen the world cry. And that is a man-made crisis. And that is a crisis that the Europeans and Americans have created with other foreign entities who are playing politics there, an internal war that has gone crazy, and 30-something million people are starving. We are not talking about this. Here we're talking about a man-made catastrophe, but the man who made this is Hamas, and they can stop it by the end of the show. Bring our 130-something hostages to the border post, say take them. Israel is allowing the world, Germany, Jordan, USA, Great Britain, Egypt are all sending goods, hundreds of trucks coming in every day, things being airdropped into Gaza. Why are they being airdropped? Do you know why they're being airdropped? Because trucks that come in are looted by Hamas. Otherwise, why do we need to airdrop? There are enough ways for trucks to come in. Israel has created new inroads to Gaza, but Hamas is looting, so they're airdropping it. And then you see a video of a Gazan taking the American airdrop and saying this is not spicy, it doesn't taste good, and throwing it out in the garbage bin. So I'm very sorry. I know the world loves the attention when Israel is involved, but there are bigger crises, and this is the easiest one to solve, because while there's a civil war going on in Sudan, in Israel, all that has to happen is for Hamas to return the hostages and lay down arms. Very simple.
Okay, you know, with all due respect to my Israeli guests, not only is it my job to play the devil's advocate, usually I do not express my own opinions on the show. My job, I know as a journalist, is to ask questions. But because this is a question of a massive humanitarian crisis, and I do believe that this should be a burden on our conscience, honestly, I find a lot of these arguments that are being trotted out very hard to digest. Oh, but why are we not talking about Sudan? So Palestinian lives matter less? Oh, but why did the UN chief not condemn Hamas? Why did he not talk about release of hostages? I don't care what the UN chief said. I care about the people who are dying of hunger and starvation in Gaza. I think Israel is the only country in the world today which is in denial about this tragedy that is unfolding right before our eyes. So these red herrings will not help. Whatever our Israeli friends may say to defend what their country is doing in Gaza, it does not change the fact that Gazans today are dying of hunger and starvation, not to mention the 31,000 Palestinians who've been killed according to the Gazan Health Ministry. And Dr. Ido Zelkovitz, do you know what makes it so much worse? And, you know, our friends on the panel seem to think it is just me saying it, it is just the United Nations chief saying it, and who cares about what the United Nations chief says? He has no credibility in their eyes. But may I remind you that your closest and staunchest ally, President Joe Biden of the United States of America, has said time and time and again to Netanyahu, enough is enough. Too many people have died. Now you want to go into Rafah without a plan? No, you better not do that. He is saying people are dying of starvation. You've got to do more to get in aid to Gaza. Now, if Israel was really doing such a fabulous job of getting aid to Gazans, number one, why do you think your closest ally would be complaining every single day, in fact, publicly, about Netanyahu and his conduct of the war? And number two, adding insult to injury, your Prime Minister last week even denied that Gazans are starving. You know what he said? That's not the information we have, and we monitor it closely. Which world is Mr. Netanyahu living in? Because the world that we live in, we know the reality. Gazans are dying, not just from bullets, but from starvation. And your Prime Minister is not even willing to acknowledge that?
Hello, Nia. Regarding to the issue of the current situation between the Israeli leadership and U.S. administration, yes, I think that we heard that there are some unpleasant voices coming from DC, but by and large, the ally between of that side is very strong. You know, sometimes also friends can disagree, and President Biden got its own political needs. He's in an election year, and he wants to retrieve as much voices as he can from the marginalized radical left camp inside the Democratic Party, and also from the Muslim and Arab immigrants in US, mainly in Michigan state. Now, jumping into the issue regarding to Rafah, with all due the respect to President Biden, and there is a lot of respect, we are very close allies, Israel and the US. In the end of the day, only the Israeli army will decide how and when to go to Rafah, and Israel is not a puppet of the US administration. Israel is an independent country that will do whatever it needs in order to achieve the security for its own citizens. There is a strategic need to go inside Rafah. And by the way, there are also American observers inside the discussions room in Israel. They will be informed about the plan before it will be taken out. And I think that in the end of the day, this is a political game. President Biden having his own point of view, and I think that Israel and the US in the end of the process will find the right formula that will be accepted on both sides, and the military operation over Rafah will be launched. It's just a matter of time. Israel must take down all of the military capabilities of Hamas, must topple it down, and Israel must take control over the tunnels in the border between the Gaza Strip and Egypt in order to cut the armed supplies that Hamas trying to smuggle in these tunnels, and also to prevent them.
Since
And also
I'm
to
short on
prevent
time, I need to come in here.
One
Yes.
sentence with your permission. Also, Israel must take over these tunnels, because maybe there is a plan of Hamas to smuggle out Israeli hostages from Gaza to Sinai. Therefore, Israeli army must have presence over there.
Okay, you know, with all due respect, and I really do need to counter our Israeli guest tonight, you know, Dr. Zagovitz says it's all a political game. It may be for the US administration, it may be for President Biden who faces an election, but sir, more than 31,000 people dying in missile strikes and of bullets, and thousands staring at a famine and the possibility of dying from hunger and starvation is not a game. These are real people. These are human beings like you and me. And with all due respect, when you say we are nobody's puppet, we will do what we want to do, what is right in what is in our interest. Let me remind you, you do need the United States of America. You do depend on military assistance from the Biden administration. Therefore, Netanyahu can go on saying all he wants, but at the end of the day, he needs Biden's support. If it wasn't for US support, I don't think Israel could have gone as far as it has fighting this war. Let's be very clear about that. But since I'm out of time, Lev Aaron, I'll ask you this question. Do you not believe that by, honestly, and I'm not singling you out here, I mean any Israeli who appears on a show like this and talks about what's happening in Gaza currently, by sounding like a broken record, by going on and on about, you know, what Hamas has done, and, you know, we don't take UN seriously, or what about the hostages? Oh, this is our right to self-defense. Oh, have so many Palestinians actually died? We don't know, we doubt that. By making all these insensitive statements, when asked about the killings of thousands of Palestinians, or the fact that millions could starve to death, do you not believe that Israel is isolating itself further and further and further from the rest of the world?
First of all, I do think that the fringe right in Israel is causing isolation because the way the fringe right is talking about Palestinians, sometimes in an inhuman way, sometimes claiming that they're like all Palestinians in Gaza are responsible for what happened in October and so on. It is insensitive, and it is also causing the damage that you spoke about right now. But I feel that the main merit that I have in this show is translating the Israeli psyche to the Indian viewer, because I guess people think, okay, Israelis, they have a good country, they're blooming, and we think that they're like rational nation. How come they behave the way they behave? So in this way, I feel like I'm a cultural translator of the Israeli psyche to, for instance, the Indian viewer. And in this sense, I think you're right. We are not banking on the numbers that Hamas is providing. We feel that all the numbers that everybody is giving, the US, the EU, everybody
Okay.
else, also the Indian,
Lev, nobody denies what happened on the 7th of October was beyond horrific, and trust me, the world was with you that day and for many days and weeks following the 7th of October. But, Itai Melchior, the reality today, as the war is in its 6th month, is that Israel has lost most of the support and goodwill that it had in the early days. Let's not be in denial about it. Like I keep saying, you can refer to the statements of your, staunchest ally and friend, President Biden. And no, it's not just about the election. It is because people are dying. So I'll ask you this one more time. By being almost dismissive of the thousands of Palestinians who've died in Gaza and the millions who might starve, are you not dehumanizing the Palestinians? Is this going to win you any friends in the world today?
Nia, no one is in denial about how the world sees what's going on. But I'm sure that if war was waged on India, then our Indian viewers would like their army to retaliate. Now,
Sir, can I tell you, we had a 26/11, but we did not go into Pakistan with the intention of destroying that entire country and annihilating all the Pakistani people. We did not do that.
Yes, but this is not the same analogy here. Now, it is very cynical to say that Israel is on purpose starving the Palestinians for two reasons. One, that means we are very inept and incompatible, because it is very easy to shut down Gaza. And there are voices in Israel who say, shut Gaza down until they return the hostages. No food truck, not one enters. We've had demonstrations, we've had civilians try and stop the food trucks. The army needed to open new routes. We've allowed foreign air forces to fly over our airspace to allow food. And we know, for the simple reason that if that was a condition and we shut down Gaza, that will not impact the Hamas to return our hostages, and people will die. So therefore, Israel is doing every effort, and that's why we don't see scenes like we see in Sudan, because Israel is trying to make every effort. Saying that we starve on purpose is ridiculous for the same simple
However,
reason
the trouble with the
had
argument that we are doing our best is that nobody outside of Israel actually believes that anymore. It's only the people of Israel or the government of Israel that believes that today. Nobody outside of Israel, I'm sorry, Mr. Melchior, nobody outside of Israel believes that you've done your best to get aid into Gaza, and nobody accepts Netanyahu's argument that people are actually not starving. I think this is the most insensitive statement that your Prime Minister could have made.
But you haven't answered one simple question, which I'm asking. Can Israel shut Gaza down from food and water and electricity in a flick of a button now? Yes, it can. We can do that. It is very easy. And
it's easy for you to keep taking the moral high ground, but it is a reality. It is a reality, sir, that more than 30,000 have been killed. And it is a reality that at least half the population of Gaza is starving. So I wonder what happened to Israel's incredible
So why is this
efforts.
still going
What
on?
happened to Israel's incredible
it still
efforts?
going on
Why
then?
are so many people facing starvation today? This is the question I think Israel needs to answer to the world. Okay, I am completely out of time. On that note, Itai Melchior, Dr. Ido Zelkovitz and Lev Aaron, thank you very much for joining me on Global Lens.